Welcome, dear listener, to Somnus Sagas, where the shadows of history weave tales to guide you gently into sleep. Tonight, with shadows of Whitechapel, the murders that haunted a city, we drift through the fog-laden streets of 1888 London, where whispers of lives lost linger in the dark. Picture a quiet alley, its cobblestones glistening under faint gaslight, the air thick with mist. Let your mind soften, your breath slow, as we step into a world of somber stories. These tales are true, rooted in the past, delivered in a steady, soothing rhythm. Close your eyes, let the world fade. In the autumn of 1888, London stood as the heart of a vast empire. Queen Victoria's reign glittered with grandeur, her golden jubilee a memory of celebration. The city's west bustled with wealth, carriages rolling, top hats bobbing, fine dresses sweeping the pavements. But in the east, in Whitechapel, life was a different tale. Narrow courts, damp and dim, wound through crumbling tenements. The air carried the scent of refuse, of horse droppings scattered on uneven stones. Poverty clung to every corner, where families crowded into single rooms, their days a quiet struggle for survival. Here, in this forgotten quarter, a shadow moved unseen, leaving death in its wake. In Whitechapel, the days began early. At dawn, men trudged to the docks, their boots heavy on cobbled paths. Women stirred pots over meager fires, their hands worn from scrubbing floors or sewing late into the night. Children darted through alleys, chasing scraps of food or play. The streets hummed with life, vendors calling, horses clopping, the clink of coins in a pub. Yet beneath this rhythm, fear simmered. The year was 1888, and whispers of murder had begun to spread. The common lodging houses, 233 in number, offered shelter to thousands. For 4 pence one could claim a single bed, its mattress thin and stained. For 2 pence, a rope stretched across a room where men and women lean, sleeping upright, their breaths mingling in the stale air. The lodging houses smelled of damp wood, unwashed clothes, and despair. Each morning, residents rose, counted their coins, and faced the day's grind. Some women, with no other means, turned to the streets, their footsteps echoing in dark courts, seeking enough for a bed, a crust, a sip of gin. The police patrolled these streets, their lanterns casting faint glows. Constables walked in pairs, their boots steady on the stones, their eyes scanning doorways. They knew the alleys, the courts, the places where shadows lingered. Yet something eluded them, something that moved in the night, unseen, unheard, until it struck. On August 31st, 1888, the air was cool, the sky dark with clouds. Polly Nichols, 43, walked Whitechapel's streets, her bonnet slightly askew. She had spent the evening in a lodging house, her laughter mingling with the clink of glasses. But 4 pence for a bed was beyond her reach. "I'll soon get my DOS money," she said, her voice bright with defiance. "See what a jolly bonnet I've got." She stepped into the night, her footsteps fading into Buck's Row. Buck's Row was quiet, its cobbles slick with dew. Gas lamps flickered, casting long shadows. At 3:40 a.m., Charles Cross, a carter, walked this path, his cart creaking softly. He noticed a bundle in a gateway, perhaps a tarpaulin, he thought. He approached, his boots scuffing the stones. The bundle was no cloth but a woman, still and silent. Another carter, Robert Paul, joined him. They knelt, their breaths shallow. Her hands were cold, her chest barely moved. They pulled her skirts to cover her, then sought a constable, their steps quickening. Constable John Neal found her moments later. His lantern revealed a horror. Polly's throat was cut, her head nearly severed, her blood staining the ground beneath her. Dr. Llewellyn arrived, his coat flapping in the early morning chill, and confirmed her death. At the mortuary, Inspector Spratling noted a deep gash along her abdomen, a grim signature of violence. Polly's life, one of struggle and fleeting joys, had ended in the shadows of Buck's Row. The streets of Whitechapel stirred with unease. Men gathered in pubs, their voices low, speculating about the killer. Women clutched their shawls tighter, their steps hurried past dark corners. The police, led by Inspector Edmund Reed of H Division, combed the lodging houses, their lanterns casting circles of light on damp walls. They questioned residents, their notebooks filling with names, but found no answers. The day wore on, with carts rumbling, vendors shouting, and the scent of gin and smoke lingering in the air. Polly's bonnet lay trampled in the gutter, a quiet reminder of a life lost. Let your mind drift now as we move to another night, another street where the shadows deepen. Picture the cobblestones, cool and slick, the gas lamps flickering. Breathe slowly, let the tension ease as we step into the next chapter of this somber tale. September 8th, 1888. Dawn grey and heavy. Annie Chapman, 47, rose from her lodging house bed, her face lined with years of hardship. She sipped tea, weak and tepid, and counted her coins. Never enough. The streets called her back, their alleys familiar, their dangers ever present. At 5:30 a.m., Elizabeth Long saw her outside 29 Hanbury Street, speaking with a man, his face shadowed, his voice low. Annie's laugh, soft and weary, carried on the morning air. Hanbury Street was narrow, its houses leaning close, their windows dim with grime. John Davis, an elderly resident, shuffled downstairs at 6 a.m., his slippers scuffing the worn boards. He opened the back door to the yard, expecting the usual sight: laundry lines, scattered refuse, the faint smell of damp earth. Instead, he saw Annie, her body crumpled between steps and fence, her throat cut twice, her abdomen torn open. A leather apron, freshly washed, lay in the corner, glinting faintly in the dawn. Davis stumbled back, his shout drawing workmen, their faces paling as they saw her. The police arrived, their boots heavy on the cobbles. Inspector Aberline, his coat buttoned against the chill, surveyed the scene. The yard was quiet now, save for the murmur of officers, their lanterns casting long shadows. Annie's life, one of small joys, shared tea, a fleeting smile, had ended in violence. The leather apron, innocent despite its menace, fueled whispers of a killer named Leather Apron, a spectre haunting the streets. The day unfolded slowly. Women mended clothes in dim rooms, their needles flashing. Men hauled crates at the docks, their breaths puffing in the cool air. Fear grew, a quiet hum beneath the city's rhythm. The police knocked on doors, their questions met with shrugs, their notepads filling with empty leads. Annie's death stirred panic, the streets buzzing with rumors, the air thick with unease. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a quiet stream. Picture the streets, the fog curling low as we move to another night, another tragedy. September 30th, 1888 was a night of restless shadows. Elizabeth Stride, known as Long Liz, walked Burner Street, her shawl pulled tight. She had spent the evening in a pub, her voice mingling with laughter, her coins spent on gin. At 1 a.m., Israel Schwartz saw her in a gateway, arguing with a man, his movement sharp, her body falling to the ground. Schwartz hurried past, the cobbles slick underfoot, unaware he may have glimpsed a killer. Louis Dimschutz's pony shied as he entered Dutfield's yard, the cart creaking. A match flared, revealing Elizabeth's body, her throat cut, blood pooling on the stones. The killer, perhaps startled, had fled, leaving no mutilations, only silence. The yard, bordered by dim houses, smelled of earth and decay. Police lanterns flickered, their beams catching the glint of blood. Elizabeth's life, woven with small moments, shared songs, a warm drink, ended in the dark. Meanwhile, Catherine Eddowes, 46, left Bishopsgate Police Station, her voice light with a drunken farewell. Good night, old cock. She wandered toward Mitre Square, her steps uneven, her shawl slipping. 3 men, Joseph Lewende, Joseph Levy, Harry Harris, saw her at 1:30 a.m., chatting with a man, his face half seen, his build medium, his air that of a sailor. They walked on, the square quiet save for their footsteps. At 1:45 a.m., P.C. Watkins entered Mitre Square, his lantern sweeping the dark. In a corner, Catherine lay, her throat slashed, her body torn open, her face marred with cuts, her kidney gone. The square, surrounded by warehouses, was silent, its cobbles cold. The police, now from both city and metropolitan forces, searched nearby alleys, their lanterns bobbing. A bloodied apron piece, dropped in Goulston Street, hinted at the killer's path. But he was gone, melted into the night. Whitechapel woke to panic. Crowds gathered, their voices hushed, their eyes scanning doorways. Women stayed indoors, their sewing needles still, their children close. The police, led by Abilene and Moore, questioned dock workers, lodging housekeepers, their notepads heavy with names. The day dragged on, the air thick with fear, the streets alive with whispers of a phantom killer. Breathe deeply now. Let the tension slip away. Picture the fog curling through the alleys as we move to the final darkest chapter. November 9, 1888 was cold. The fog thick in Dorset Street. Mary Kelly, 25, sang softly in her room at 13 Miller's Court, her voice carrying through the cracked window. She had no coins for rent, her bed unmade, her table scattered with cups and crumbs. At 2 a.m., George Hutchinson saw her on Commercial Street, her smile fleeting as she asked for sixpence. A man approached, his stare sharp, his coat dark. Mary led him to her room, their laughter fading into the court. At 10:45 a.m., Thomas Bowyer knocked for rent, his knuckles rapping the worn door. No answer came. Peering through the broken window, he saw blood, flesh, horror. Mary's body lay on the bed, her throat cut, her form barely human, her face hacked, her thighs stripped. An axe, not just a knife, had torn her apart, leaving lumps on the bedside table. The room, small and dim, smelled of damp and death. Inspectors Abilene, Dew and Beck arrived, their faces grim. The door, locked, was broken with a pickaxe, the wood splintering. The police searched the court, its cobbles slick, its air heavy. Mary's life, songs by candlelight, shared gin, had ended in carnage. The streets outside buzzed with crowds, their voices low, their eyes wide. Vendors sold pamphlets, their cries piercing the fog. The police, now under new pressure, questioned neighbors, their lanterns flickering, but found no trace of the killer. Let your mind ease, the images fading like mist. Picture the quiet streets, the gas lamps dim, as we draw this tale to a close. As November 1888 faded into winter, the streets of Whitechapel grew quiet once more. The fog, thick and grey, curled through the alleys, softening the harsh edges of the cobblestones. Each morning, men rose early, their boots scuffing the damp streets as they headed to the docks, their breath puffing in the cold air. Women stirred pots over small fires, the scent of weak tea and stale bread filling cramped rooms. Children darted through courts, their laughter a faint echo against the brick walls. The rhythm of life, clopping horses, creaking carts. The distant cry of a vendor returned, as if the terror had never been. Yet the shadow lingered, a whisper in the dark. After Mary Kelly's death on November 9th, no new murders bore the killer's mark. The police, their lanterns dim, their notepads heavy with unanswered questions, patrolled with weary steps. Inspector Aberline, his coat worn thin, walked Dorset Street, his eyes scanning doorways, finding only silence. The vigilance committees, once armed with whistles and sticks, disbanded, their patrols fading into the fog. The crowds that had thronged Mitre Square and Berners Street dispersed, their footsteps fading, their voices hushed. In the lodging houses, life resumed its grind. For 4 pence a bed could be claimed, its mattress sagging, its sheets threadbare. For 2 pence a rope offered rest, bodies leaning in the dim, stale air. Women counted coins, their fingers trembling, fearing the night but needing to survive. The pubs hummed with low voices, the clink of glasses, the sharp tang of gin. Fear ebbed like water retreating from the Thames banks, yet the memory of those autumn nights clung to the city's edges. The inquest for Mary Kelly, held swiftly on November 12th, offered no answers. Only a coffin of almond oak carried through Shoreditch, watched by thousands, their hands brushing its surface as it passed. The streets, slick with dew, gleamed under gas lamps. Constables walked their beats, their lanterns casting soft circles, their boots steady on the cobbles. Life in Whitechapel, with its damp walls and crowded rooms, pressed on. The terror, once sharp, dulled into a story told over flickering fires, a tale to hush children to sleep. The city exhaled, its pulse slowing as the shadow retreated into the fog. Let your breath slow now, like the city's quieting pulse. Picture the alleys, the fog curling low, as we drift to the question of what became of the shadow. The Whitechapel murderer, known as Jack the Ripper, left no trace after Miller's Court. The cobblestones, worn and slick, held no clues, only the scuff of countless boots. The police, their lanterns flickering, searched tirelessly. Inspector Frederick Aberline, his face lined with sleepless nights, questioned lodgers in dim, damp rooms, their voices low, their eyes averted. Chief Inspector Donald Swanson at Scotland Yard sifted through reports, his pen scratching in the quiet, finding no answers. The alleys, narrow and dark, seemed to swallow the killer whole, his steps silent, his form unseen. Some whispered he was a butcher, his apron stained, blending with the slaughtermen who worked by dawn's light. Others thought him a doctor, his hands skilled, slipping through Whitechapel's maze unseen. A rumor spoke of Aaron Kosminski, a Polish Jew, his mind fraying, committed to Colney Hatch Asylum in 1891. Sir Robert Anderson, in his memoirs, claimed Kosminski was the man, seen by a witness, perhaps Israel Schwartz, hurrying past Berners Street, who refused to testify. The seaside home identification, a fleeting hope, led nowhere. the law demanding more than a glance in the dark. Kosminski's family, in their cramped Whitechapel rooms, spoke little of him, their words hushed, their shame heavy. Perhaps the killer died, his breath stilled in some forgotten court. Perhaps he sailed away, a shadow on a ship, the Thames carrying him to distant shores. Or perhaps he lingered unseen in Whitechapel's alleys, his hands clean, his knife hidden, blending with the dock workers, their coats heavy with river damp. The police searched, their lanterns bobbing, their questions echoing in pubs where gin dulled fear. The streets, with their horse droppings and scattered straw, offered no answers. The killer was gone, a phantom dissolved into the fog, leaving only questions to haunt the night. Breathe deeply now, as the mystery fades like mist. Picture the Thames, its waters slow, as we turn to London's future, shaped by these dark days. The murders of 1888 left scars on London, faint but lasting. Whitechapel streets, still damp and cobbled, carried on. Men trudged to the docks, their boots heavy, their hands calloused. Women sewed by candlelight, their needles flashing, their children asleep on thin pallets. The lodging houses, with their sagging beds and stretched ropes, filled each night, the air thick with smoke and despair. Yet change stirred, slow as the Thames current, spurred by the horror that had gripped the city. The murders drew eyes to Whitechapel's squalor. Newspapers, their ink fresh, decried the slums. Rooms where 9 slept, walls dripping with damp, the stench of refuse choking the air. Reformers, their voices steady, called for better housing, cleaner streets. Over years, tenements were raised, new homes built, their bricks sturdy, their windows letting in light. Sanitation improved, the alleys less foul, the courts less choked with sewage. Gas lamps grew brighter, their glow pushing back the shadows where fear once lingered. The police, too, felt the weight of 1888. Sir Charles Warren's resignation, tendered as Mary Kelly's coffin passed, marked a shift. New methods emerged, photographs, fingerprints, the slow birth of forensic science, though too late for Whitechapel's dead. The Metropolitan Police, their coats worn, their lanterns dim, learned to patrol darker corners, to question deeper, though the killer's escape haunted them. The people of Whitechapel, once voiceless, found strength. Vigilance committees, with their whistles and sticks, sparked a spirit of community, their efforts outlasting the terror. Women, once fearful, walked with knives, their steps bolder, their resolve hardened. London grew, its empire vast, its wealth spreading. The East End, though still poor, saw new schools, their bells ringing, new markets, their stalls bright with fruit. The Thames flowed on, its waters carrying away the fear, leaving a city stronger, its pulse steadier. Whitechapel's story, told in hushed tones over flickering fires, became a legend, a reminder of resilience, of survival. Let your mind drift now, like the Thames' gentle current. Picture the city, its lights growing bright as we draw this tale to a close. As November's fog lifted, Whitechapel streets grew quiet once more. The creak of carts, the call of vendors, the patter of children's feet returned, softening the echoes of fear. The police, their lanterns dimming, their notepads full, found no answers. Mary Kelly's death, a final brutal note, marked the end of the Shadows' reign, though none knew it then. The mystery of 1888 lingers, its truths buried in Whitechapel's alleys, like dust settling in an empty room. Picture the Thames now, its waters slow and dark, reflecting the city's faint lights. Let these stories fade, like mist dissolving in the dawn. Sleep now, dear listener, as the night grows still, carrying you gently to rest. If these tales have soothed you, please leave a gentle like on this video. It helps Somnus Sagas weave more stories for your slumber. And if you'd like to join us for more journeys through history's shadows, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support lights our path, like a lantern in the fog. Sleep well.